perhaps a tendency towards less pronounced masculine tendencies in the West, probably just in Los Angeles, but I am perhaps...
Would you care to define a few of those terms? What's masculine?
Yeah. See, there's the problem.
What is masculine?
We used to know, you know, John Wayne and all that.
Duke's gone.
Yeah.
What is masculine? We live in a matriarchal...
I was at the symposium. This guy did a seminar. He's from Scandinavian country. What's his name? Yes. No, but anyway, he said that
Can't lose this.
he said that the world, you know, the yin-yang theory, it's going more yin now, which is basically an inner type of search, and also a more feminine, which is more mysticism in the world itself. He says that we're going through a cycle now. He says he did readily admit that. I mean, you know, in his seminar.
He said that.
Yeah.
Something just occurred to me that I heard some time back that, and I'd like to direct this toward Darwin, because Darwin was there at the time. He had a lot of experience being around Baba. That when Baba was with the Western Mandalayer disciples, followers, just the men alone, that he brought out in them, you might call manly qualities or male qualities that are so beautiful, because with love everything is made beautiful, but you can see what a man is capable of being of, especially when, as I understand it, Baba was in the presence of the men, and he brought about a certain kind of a spirit. Could you talk about that?
That is essentially true. Baba was always Baba, of course, and he was always the divine beloved, and the drama of the divine romance was always being in process. It was the game of lovers and the beloved was always going on. But in relation to the men, it seems to me that Baba was able to and did impart a special kind of masculine camaraderie that helped us as men to feel right about having the feelings that sometimes are attributed only to women. The kind of love turned out to be a strong kind and beautiful kind of love, and we saw in him a strength which we hoped someday we would find within ourselves. And we found not only a support from him, but the kind of a support that put us more on our own 2 feet as men, and integrated us and made us more, I feel, self-reliant. I can't just simply pick out being with him physically, because it isn't that way. It's an unbroken continuity, and of course, both with men and with women, his work is to bring about a total integration, and to bring about within the women as well great inner strength. We've seen in some of Baba's women that same kind of strength that we might have ordinarily attributed only to men. So it's really hard to say that he was a whole lot different when with the men than with the women. Some of the physical things that would happen with the men would be that you might be walking along and all of a sudden you get a resounding smack on the back and almost knock you over. Well, he wouldn't do that with the women. there's indefinable qualities that seem to emerge that we needed, I presume that we needed as individuals. And my own feeling is that he could manifest the kind of qualities that all at once that maybe a dozen or maybe hundreds of people all at once would need. And each one would probably see something that would be of special value to him or to her. I must say that he was always so undescribably loving, but in a way that had a deep inner power and strength that penetrated to the very marrow of our bones and at the same time went to the very depths of our hearts. In India, one of the first things he said to us, "I am your master, I am also your friend." And he wanted us to be completely natural around him. To relax inwardly, to be so natural that there was no tension. He played marbles with us, played table tennis with us, and I suppose he knew that he had to do that, otherwise we would be so overwhelmed with his presence that he wouldn't be able to do anything with us. But there would be individual little intimacies of attention and humor. For example, in India I used to wear one of these visor caps, like one of the fellows is wearing here tonight.
Rick?
One of those visor caps I was wearing over there.
Like a baseball cap?
Yeah, well, you know, like that. And
Did you want one?
you haven't been following the conversation.
Yeah, but it turned me like I had it on, so I mean, you've been following it as well.
Wasn't the original question whether the man's role is changing?
Yeah.
That's my question.
Whether we notice it. We can't really do that unless we consider whether the woman's role is changing. You know, I mean, that relates very heavily onto the man's role. I mean, I think that there is a change in attitude in women. I mean, women are beginning to become far less repressed. I mean, it seems, you know, like there is a political sort of changing in women's attitudes. But then again, it's paradoxical because there's no democracy in spirituality. You know, I mean, there is a change in role. That's all
that you perceive.
That I perceive. Yeah.
What would you ascribe to being a masculine role, apart from, as opposed to a feminine role, apart from the obvious physical differences between the two sexes? Forgetting those,
to be honest,
what is really masculine?
I wouldn't ascribe, in particular, anything as a particularly masculine role, but I would say that I see perhaps less qualities of steadfastness, perhaps, or of sense of strength, sense of inner strength. And that certainly, I'm saying, is male.
Baba said
transcends.
himself that it was the head and the heart. And in historical light, I don't know how far back that goes or what Baba meant exactly, but he did say that the qualities of the head were generally associated with men, and the qualities of the heart were generally associated with women. So that if your sanskaras give you a male body in a particular time, then supposedly or apparently, from the best I can tell, you are a little bit weighted on that side. Not always, but I think that that's the general trend. So at least that's the way Baba divided up, and he didn't divide up masculine and feminine in any rigid way. But I think there's a general, underneath that, Baba said we are both. So when we talk about, I mean, a men's coffee and a women's tea is a little odd in a way, because we are both, and who can go to, what qualifies you to go to one or the other? In a way, with Baba, you can go to both, because you are masculine and feminine. But if you happen to have a masculine form this time, one assumes that sanskarically that means that you do have those head qualities a little bit stronger, and the women have the heart qualities a little bit stronger in general.
Or maybe you should have those qualities a little stronger in some cases.
Not so much should, it just happens to be that the form goes with the sanskaras a little bit better in that sense, so that's why we take a certain form. Your hair is curly, and mine isn't as curly, but our sanskaras have determined down to that, because you have to appear a certain way. Just as I have to appear, sort of square-jawed and southern, as my bane this lifetime, right? What can I do? You have to appear Californian, or whatever. And our sanskaras make us appear this way, so that we can go through our lives working out certain things. And the male body is that vehicle for those sanskaras. So you will probably have more of those qualities, but you might not individually. It could be that your sanskaras are balanced in such a way that even though you have a male body, you have many more of the heart qualities. But the leadership, the intellectual endeavors and so forth have been weighted a little more on the male side, one would have to say. Male bodies seem to tend that way, especially in our culture, than the female. But I think that Baba, which I think goes back to what you were saying, turned that upside down a little bit. And this is my feeling about it, because
giving the men more heart, you mean, than they have hitherto had?
Yeah. I think that the roles are changing.
Particularly in the West, don't you think?
Yeah, particularly in the West.
In the East, there are still cultures where the men relax and the women do all the heavy labor. And
it depends on the social structure.
yes, and whereas, especially in the West, there's more of an equalization. The men don't mind sweeping the floor, or putting a meal on, or doing diapering the baby, or whatever it is, and going out shopping, which is we think of as a male chore anyway over here, but some places in the East it's a woman's job. So there's an equalization that goes on over here.
And Baba actually had in the early days, some women do chores and work associated with the male. This is getting a little bit away from masculine and feminine. This is talking about male-female now, which is a little different, I think. That is to say, one has to be aware that then masculine and feminine are both, we're all of that. I think we always have to keep that in mind, that we're both. But that in terms of roles that cultures have built up, that's something different. Spiritual truth doesn't change, apparently, but the roles change. And as Darwin's pointed out, in some cultures they're quite opposite, and then they go back and they go forth. But the early days with Baba, if someone was a good carpenter, I mean, Rano happened to be pretty good with the hammer, for example. She could make things, and she did that. If someone was good at doing something, they did it. And whether they had a female body or a male body didn't seem to be the determining factor for Baba. He didn't say women should do certain kinds of jobs and men should do certain kinds of jobs. If he'd said that, Elizabeth and Norina and others would have, their work would have been quite different. So I think by example, my feeling is that the change in women today is due to Baba's own spiritual revolution. This is again my own conclusion that I'm drawing, but from looking at his women disciples and the roles they played, I feel that Baba changed the role of women in his circle, and therefore he did it for the world, particularly the Western world, because the Western women really are the reference points that we can point to for these changes more than anywhere else. The Eastern women, by and large, their roles were somewhat different. Somewhat different.
So where does the scope then begin for the interrelation between man and woman? I prefer a woman that I can more or less care for in a feminine way. And when she is sort of changing her roles, what do I do?
That's a good question.
I mean, I particularly would love an Eastern woman as my wife.
Yeah.
Because I would appreciate what she did for me at home while I worked hard. I would come home to her and utterly adore her. And I would love her like I couldn't love anyone else except Baba. And she'd be a perfect example of where I can give my love to. When I have somebody there that is in, what is life anyway? It's supposed to be just work, competing, so forth, going, where are you going? Can't she be home like a cat waiting for me? No. Taking care of me. Then I tell you, it would be worthy, and that's where the love game, I think the love game would be complete then.
Brad, don't forget this is being recorded.
I'd like to. No, he meant it. No, he meant it.
Yeah, well, there's several comments. James?
Yeah, Mario?
Yeah.
I was wondering if anyone has considered whether or not the reason for the roles changing, not just between men and women, but a lot of things have changed so much because of increased lifespan. That biologically, we're built to live shorter lives without the benefit of technology. That the organism doesn't take into account the changes that technology has affected. Now that we live so long, we can decide to go to college till we're in our late 20s. We can put off children. Our bodies are prepared to have children, obviously, when we're much younger. When we put it off, that causes a lot of problems. You see kids in junior high school, their bodies are perfect to reproduce biologically without any moral judgments or anything else. This is put off, and I think it's unnatural. At least physically, biologically, I think there's a reason for it spiritually. And I think there's a reason why the male sex drive is so powerful in the early years, and it wanes just when the female sex drive begins to reach or to approach its peak. And it might be to preserve the species in a way that still allows you to have some order in your society. I think the reason that women are so connected sensually to the world, part of it is because they're the child-bearing, they're the couch for the organism, biologically. They're constantly monitoring their body temperatures, what they eat, how their body is. If there's something wrong with them, they go take care of it right away. And our lifespans are increasing. We have more and more choice. Technology gives us more and more choice. And I think that packaging, advertising, and so on foists this choice on us. It's hard to resist it.
Mm-hmm. Packaging and advertising also does inculcate a lot of male values. Of the woman as a sex object.
That's right.
I mean, the whole of advertising is male dominated. And this does expose or educate people to misconcept of values. And I think because of the spiritual awakening, people are beginning to realize that people shouldn't be repressed quite as much. I mean, there's a big difference between a voluntarily mutual cooperative unit, where you volunteer to authority. Authoritarianism doesn't exist. And I think we're going towards this. I think because of the spiritual awakening, people just aren't as prepared to repress people as they used to be. Or that they're just more aware of suffering around them.
They're more aware in general.
They won't take advantage of people quite so much.
I think there's
a leveling, rather, of the gap between the man as the sort of the person who wants to go on to the woman as the cat figure.
Yeah, I think there could be a reason for that. If at 15 you see your musculature's developed and your uncles, your brothers see that you're ready, and you can take a wife and have a marriage, and they can counsel you, guide you. Life can be very simple. You know who your gods are, who your enemies are. And your world is very small, except for your deities, for your gods. physically it's pretty small. But I think because their lifespans, this is my own, and I'm curious really if anybody's thought about it. But because of this, because our lives have gotten longer, we have more choice. We can do more things instead of living to 30 or 40 and being old, or having no teeth and so on. We can develop spiritually. We can actually grow. Life is longer. There's more to consider. We can plan and choose. And
couldn't more choice just lead to more diversification?
Yes, and I think
more misidentification with
but I think it allows for more work. Spiritually, I think it allows for just a longer period of work in each life. Not necessarily, I don't think that it's good or bad outside of that, really. Because it's all illusion, I believe. It's just a longer interval to do this work. So,
there's more immediate feedback to go on as far as that goes.
You talking about communications, Chris?
No, I'm talking about the fact that people are living longer today, and the fact that most people do not remember what went on in their other lives.
Yeah. James wanted to jump into it too.
Going back to what Paul said, talking of the question of masculinity and femininity and what has become of this, what are the changes? First of all, I think it's important to see that there is no such thing per se as masculinity or femininity. I mean in the sense that what I might consider masculine and what anyone else here might consider, each one will be different because it is an idea which we have in our mind, which the actual essence of masculinity or femininity is a man, a masculine creature, the masculine sanskaras, in expression in the world. But expression is a function of attitude and of physical role. The historical circumstances of physical role have changed. None of us do, like in the process of us all becoming more fully human, more completely man and woman, actual spirit in body. It is necessary in this time for women who have been more repressed, more unexpressed, to go through a process of assertion to bring out the qualities which were more latent and to express them, while at the same time it has been necessary for the man who historically in general has been more assertive, more aggressive, to step back a little bit and begin to experience on levels other than those of just force and action. And so that it seems like in terms of what will become an action-reaction synthesis, where as a result of what has been this period of time, the men are not certain, many of us, of who we are or how to express ourselves because the old values, the old patterns do not apply, and the women are expressing themselves in general much more because their old patterns don't apply, so everything is shifting. But over a course of time, I think we will find that we will achieve a new synthesis whereby we can be more fully human because the men will find a way to more fully express themselves, not limited by cultural ideas of this is masculinity and that is not, whereas the women at the same time will be able to more fully express themselves as people, not limited by this is what a woman can or can't do, and as two more unlimited people will be able to find among ourselves a new way of relationship which is not bound by the older stereotypes. And it is my opinion that this is what Baba has done in bringing this about.
Yeah, one thing that I always think of when I'm thinking of myself being in a male form was Baba's statement that to me it was like a powerful fist just going right into the stereotype to the extreme form of masculinity that has done so much harm in our society. It's although I relate it to like our natural sanskaras of evolution, lingering within the human form from our animal incarnations. But when Baba said, the definition of a real man is a man who controls lust, greed, and anger, and I always use that. That's always first for me whenever I look at the sexes or at myself. But also in relation to that, I think it seems Baba through all the spiritual masters seem to appreciate and to recognize and acknowledge a sense of chivalry. And chivalry to me is a very refined aspect of masculinity, which is unique. It's like the most refined aspect of masculinity, and I think of it that God's Leela, his enjoyment, his living through all of us, is living through the female and the male form. In the male form, that God is experiencing the uniqueness of the masculine qualities in a very refined sense, in the sense of chivalry. And I just always saw that, in studying different spiritual texts and things, that this sense of chivalry in men was something to be recognized and refined.
The question there is going back to Fred, I think, and I think what James has said and what you said are really speaking directly to what Fred was saying, because how do we get to the new forms in which we can really be one with one another in a marriage? How do we get to the ideal in the Middle Ages was chivalry, and there's something of truth in that will never die. As you say, there's some truth that took that form. Just as you say, it's a cultural thing that changes, but underneath there's the truth of the masculine and the feminine in us that have to express themselves in certain forms and relationships. So we're going through a period now when the forms are breaking down. So, as James expressed, building new forms. What is the family going to look like? What is a marriage going to look like? Well, it certainly we can't go back to your ideal, Fred, I don't think in just that way, but we can go back to your ideal in a way perhaps that is now just being imagined and lived, or perhaps that Baba has brought into being and now we're beginning to experience it. So that I think that what you say about the kind of marriage you want will be available to people, but perhaps it won't be in the same images or forms of the past. In fact, I think Martin was saying that too, that maybe there will be these experiments now in roles and so forth that have struck some of us as harsh and difficult to work with because we happen to be living in this confusion. These experiments will go to something that we all will be able to be happy with, and it will embody that ideal, but in a way that is new.
It'll be raffled off at the next retreat.
Yeah, right. And you see, the age we're going into is intuition. And what James is saying made me think that men are going to be more threatened by that than women, really. And it's a wonderful time for women right now, in a lot of ways, because it's an awakening that is a joyous release. And so many experiments are going on that women can participate in. Men, in a way, have the most to be frightened about all the change, because the intellectual control and power, especially in our culture, has been in masculine hands or male forms for so long that naturally, when the intuitive age begins, women have the edge. In a sense, if they have a female body at this particular moment, they tend, as Baba says, to have that edge. And that's why he said, in general, women in the West are more spiritually oriented. They kept alive spiritual truths in the West for a long time, while men were not very interested. And now, you see, we're we're entering this age when some of the qualities associated with this form we have are not respected anymore. You know, they're going out the window, and it's a threat. If we don't know the spiritual truth that we have those qualities too, and most men still are not aware of that about themselves.
There's a book that there's a book called The Way of All Women, which Phyllis Frederick said was like a Bible to her in the 30s, and Virginia Small was also reading it. She says, if you're having any trouble with women, she said, you must read this book. But the one thing that book brings out in the beginning is that for a lot of men are not aware of their emotional side, their emotional nature, or their perhaps intuitive nature, except unconsciously, and that unconscious part is projected onto a woman. And that oftentimes that the... Oh shit, I'm losing my train of thought. Sorry, Bob.
Projection?
The projection, that's right. The projection of that intuitive side onto the woman makes one aware of the man aware of his feelings, which he might not be aware of otherwise. And that's just a comment that is made from that book, which is a little tough to deal with, because, as you say, if women are already more intuitively built or arranged, and yet men do need a woman, or a great majority of men need a woman on whom to project their feminine nature in order to understand it, that leaves one in a bind. Unless, I mean, how does one then go about finding that intuitive nature? How does one uncover it in everyday life?
Yeah, that's the question. You want to hope something here.
I don't want to change the subject.
No,
we should just
go ahead.
But maybe a comment.
A question here.
Yeah, I had a question. I'll comment perhaps on that, and then address a question to Darwin and Dana.
Yeah.
And then open it. From personal experience, I found that in the 10 years that I've been familiar and affiliated with Bob, as my relationship has grown, which oftentimes it's hard to draw lines to begin with. Masculine, feminine, go where it is. It's difficult to cut it up. Any of your experience, getting to the point where in my last few months here, it was difficult if someone asked me what I did to even answer that question. Play guitar, was a waiter, a caretaker of the center. Began to slowly stop thinking in terms of definitions or credentials or descriptions. And I don't know if you experience this, but I do. Stranger or friend. I find much more and more contact where I'm not conscious of me or them, little in senses.
Yeah.
I don't want to confuse it, but I mean, it's beginning to be where the definitions are falling. That's good. As I remember a time during the Sahabas, if we see Baba in other people, is Baba masculine or feminine? Or neither one? Or what that is.
Ask Dana and Darwin.
Ask Dana and Darwin. I was going to ask this at the panel discussion. Dana was not on the panel, but Darwin was. Delia was. Phyllis was, which seemed to represent what I consider the first generation. And for Charles too, even though younger in age, also first generation, but first and second generation at the same time. And Pascal also might respond to this. And Alan Cohen, who was acting as moderator, but still second generation, and all of us who had never had contact with Mayor Baba in the form. The question, our speculation was when the time has come, when all the first generation people are gone. I don't know, I sometimes think about what it will be like then. Not that I want to project or predict, But to know that the Mandali are in India, and to know that all over the world there are people that were with Baba, to know that Dana, when he comes on Friday nights, for as little as he may say, and Phyllis are there, or the Kitty and Elizabeth are in Myrtle Beach, and you're in New York, whatever. Charles in Atlanta. That seems to make a difference with me. And I'm wondering, it's all a matter of conviction. But I noticed in the panel, I was going to ask the question, then I realized that Sahavas, this last Sahavas, and last year's Sahavas, when we had Adi and Rhoda Dubois, Mino Karas was very powerful, Bella Page, and at the same time, Nashirwan, who was at the younger thing, and someone else younger. It was really a level of conviction. And I felt at the panel before I asked that question, decided not to, that there was conviction regardless of his personal conduct or not. But that's a question I have sometimes. I wonder how Darwin feels about that, or Dana feels about that, and perhaps some of the younger, I mean, it's not just men who would be left with responsibility of then being responsible for what Bob has left without all this experience, all the stories, your spiritual charisma, all that.
My own feeling is that the torch is being passed. Right now, it's in the process.
Didn't you once say at the Sahavas that you came to about 3 years ago that how much greater is the conviction of those who've never met Baba and didn't have the physical form to be by? I think you said that once, didn't you?
I could very well have, because that interests me very much. Not because they have developed it within themselves, but because Baba has revealed himself and can continue to reveal himself to whomever he wants to, who will be carrying his light. I don't think it's his light turned off when he dropped his physical body, nor his ability to transmit that light to any number of others. And I think there's a need for individuals to open themselves to Baba, to serve in his cause, not necessarily to give talks, but there will be a need for that too, but to serve in his cause in opening up the heart and the whole being so that he can flow through. And I think in his own way. Of course, he told us more than once that he does his own work. And he's a good workman. He doesn't do sloppy work. And he's going to see to it that his mission is accomplished, even though we, in our limited vision, are unable to see the full plan. My own conviction is that it is forthcoming, it is emerging, and although we just see little bits emerging now, I do feel that the conviction, even of the close Mandali, will become something that people who have not seen Baba physically will have, and even do have now.
Well, I was going to say the same thing, so therefore I don't have to say anything. But it's rather amazing. I want to say the same thing more or less in a different way. I once made a collection. I like research. I'm a work person, certain types. Some like to do work around the center, some I like to work at home and do research, intellectually. And I thought that for the future for Baba lovers, what can they cling to? How can they come closer to Baba, have Baba before them all the time? And let Baba shape them the way he wants to, which he's doing. And make it easier for Baba to shape us in his own image. I made a collection of Baba's sayings that could be taken as orders. Some could be taken as orders, general orders, and others were just suggestions. I had about 3 of the different categories. I don't remember the third one. And I compiled a lot of them. It's amazing how many you can find in all of Baba's teaching, including the family letters and messages. And I think I carelessly did not make a copy of it and gave it in the keeping for posterity to Leslie Tejada in Santa Barbara, and her house burned recently. So somebody else had to carry the torch. Would not create that kind of a fire.
What a build-up.
But that is one thing that the closer we stick to Baba, now what is our connection with Baba? It's love. And Darwin, that's Darwin's theme, I believe, in general. And our connection with God is love. And the expression of love is obedience, or as Darwin said, service. And so there are not many ways about it. You've got to either make those efforts and practice what Baba taught, concentrate on Baba, of course, first of all. But there's a hierarchy there. Baba first of all, and then love each other and care for the Baba's cause. That's asking an awful lot, and that is the new humanity. And obviously, I'm thinking on my feet. But anyway, the new person will have to do all that. They will have to develop intuition, develop spiritual qualities, as Baba says in the discourses. It's not an order, but it could be taken as what Baba wants. Spiritual disciple, an aspirant develops spiritual qualities. Now, to me, he said, I didn't have any qualities when I came to Baba. So he said he had to start from scratch and just tell me things that people already were practicing. One of them was, do it with love and courage or it's no use. I didn't have courage because I couldn't understand human nature. I had come from a feudal society in Russia, and a little town, never had problems, didn't even go to school until I came here, 8 years and a half. So I was alone there. My karma was to be alone. So Baba had to build a man, and he called me the baby, incidentally. And that was in 1958. So how old am I? How old am I in terms of? But Baba did say, however, I will make you a jewel. That's a gem or a Baba lover. That's what that means. A gem. Baba called his Western lovers, all of them, he said, to me, that they are all my gems, and I will make you a jewel. So that I'm catching up with all of you. So you don't have to feel inferior to me, for one. I mean, you people are doing all right. If Baba called you my gems. So there is all this basis, and to continue the disciplines, the qualities, the principles, the norms, or the Baba has set up standards of manliness and intelligence and action. But the norm of action is that we are Baba, so we act from that base. It's really all, it all makes a lot of sense, and you just stick closely to Baba himself, his love, and then we have to develop intuition and intelligence, in other words, spiritual intelligence, and we got to act as a spiritual people primarily, but that doesn't mean that Baba wants us to meditate. Baba doesn't give any orders to meditate. Very few people have to meditate. And working for Baba, thinking of Baba, repeating his name, or imaging Baba, which I do by his order, is a meditation. And imaging Baba, I can tell you, is a perfect meditation. I can't do it. I'm always in hot water because I have that order for Baba. So if you stick close to that, and then, of course, meeting like this, and we do have a group, and I attend a group meeting that goes in here religiously, it helps. So if we grab onto all these straws and do our best at all times, we will fall, but as Baba says, if you have experienced lust, pick yourself up swiftly. And it's really very simple, but I think it should be written up, really. I believe in writing.
I want to comment on this question too, because I think this is a crucial question. What you both have said makes me feel that we have to believe in ourselves as being with Him. I mean, we have to believe in ourselves as living with Him, as being close to Him. I think and I feel more than I think about this. I really feel in my heart that those of you who are connected with Him now were trained by Him. And I think most people who are deeply connected with Meher Baba now, who know His ways so well, Darwin may agree or disagree on this, but I just feel it, that so many were trained personally by Meher Baba. After all, he trained quite a few people in this Advent alone who are passed away over the years. Meher Baba lived quite a long life. But he couldn't have all those people live to ripe old ages and be with us now. He would have no trained people to do his work when this so-called second generation takes over. He must have first generation people in the second generation, and lots of them. Of course, lots of them is a very small number, considering the world's population. We are a small number of people in the world to be the instruments of his training for training others and for living in the world with Baba. But I really feel it. I feel it when I meet people who tell me Baba's ways and teach me about Baba, who never saw him in this life in the form. You all have to, I mean, I'm not saying that you have an exaggerated sense of importance, but a balance there must be there. You all know a lot about Baba intuitively, and it's an incredible thing. It awes me. You seem to know how he would act in situations, how he would do things, and you don't get that simply from films and reading books. Those confirm perhaps your intuitions about him, or when you hear Darwin or Dana or others who were around him, and you say, "Well, yes," and you laugh at the stories, or you feel familiar, and you like Baba, and you know him so well. It's because you probably picked those up in his presence. So I think that's the thing that to keep in mind, is that you were trained by Baba. Many of you were trained by Baba, and now you have to carry it out. You have to live the training. Baba would not leave the world without those who were trained. And that leads to my second half of the comment, which is very important. And it's urgent. That is that Baba always said, the time is now. Seize this time. The last part of his life, he said. My life with Baba has been one of great urgency, because in the last phase of his life, Baba said there is no time now. There's no time for books. There's no time for this or that. There's only time for love. One has to seize this moment, because Baba said, soon it will be too late. And I feel this now, just as I have then. I think that we're still in that urgent time we must seize. Because whether we've been trained by Baba in the past or not, what we know consciously is that we have to remember the lessons and learn as much as possible while he's still so available to us. Because this is our golden opportunity, not for this lifetime, but for getting closer and closer to him lifetimes and lifetimes in future advents. And this isn't for the world I'm speaking now, I'm just speaking for us who like this kind of work and want to be associated with him. Others will feel his love in other ways, but if we've chosen this, and we really want to be his Erich and his Mani, and be around him, this is our time to really catch hold. And it doesn't last long. The moment passes, and how many people can you still learn from or be reminded? I think a lot of it is a matter of recalling. Baba says, I've been introduced to you many times before, but you've gone out of my presence and forgotten, so now I have to be reintroduced to you. So how many people left in the Western world who lived there in India with him? There are not very many left. There are only a handful. You can count them on a hand. How many are left in the Eastern world who lived with him? And people who have great insights are fine, but those people who live with him day and night will say something about him that we must learn thoroughly now. We must really be deeply acquainted with his ways, with how he does everything he does. I can't stress this deeply enough because I just feel that this is the reason for going to India as much as we can now. This is not that we should be impractical to the extent of endangering our whole structure of life that God has given us, but as much as we can make it, we should do it. We should try to be around those and hear them, pick up their stories, because this will all give us remembrance of our own training plus knowledge of his ways that perhaps we've never had and they've had. So I think that's another aspect of this first, second generation. The torch will have to pass to those of us who have picked up this training or remembered it.
Pascal, you haven't said anything all night.
I haven't had anything to say all night.
Have you any comment on this?
I was going to say very much what Charles said, but much less eloquently. Which was simply that understanding that some of the most close ones to Baba would become one with him when they dropped their bodies, or shortly thereafter, that there would still be many who had received the training and who had been with him, who will be coming back among us, and perhaps including some of us here. And that as far as the certainty would be concerned, that would be continued. I don't think that hasn't been something that I've been concerned about.
Phyllis did mention once that she had a dream where she was at the center, and I think she was staying in the cabin that the women had stayed in 1952. And she woke up, and the cabin was very, very old. And she got the sense it was maybe 100 years from now. But she was back there, and she knew that she would be there. And I think she had a sense of herself as a young girl, a young person, back there again.
Speaking of souls coming back who are close to Baba, I've often thought that those of us who have kids, chances are some of those kids are close to Baba, were close to Baba, or will be close to Baba. And that's a responsibility that when we think about, male and female roles and families and having to deal with our wives and put up with their little eccentricities like women's lib and stuff. For those of us who have kids, that's a big responsibility to bear in mind. And also about, does anyone want to hear about the male-female thing still?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Hey, can I ask you about kids? Before we go, I just wanted to tell you all, those of you who have kids here, one of the highlights of my weekend was going in that room and seeing all those kids. I visited with the children and looking around and seeing these people. They are extraordinary, and I think that's one of the greatest responsibilities Baba has given anybody, is to have those kids, because their eyes and their response to Baba, there's some very important folks in that room with the children there, and there's some very key people, and you've been entrusted with that. So,
can I make a response to that? Yeah. Of the three helpers, none of them are Baba lovers. They're just people who have experience with children, young children. And all three of them said that they had never seen such quality in a group of children. That they would normally expect all kinds of things to go wrong with the children, which just didn't happen. And that the response that they had from the things that they were doing with the children was amazing. They just could not believe it. In fact, I think one or two of them were so interested in Baba at that time that it just kind of brought something out of them that they might follow. But I can't predict that, but it's useful to get that kind of outside feedback with regard to the children. You carry on with what you're going to say about the male-female.
Well, I was going to say about marriage, having been married for 12 and a half years or so from before, and having gone through finding out about Baba, and having gone through Women's Lib, and having gone through difficult times in my marriage, I feel like I have a comment about everything that everyone said about that. I'm not sure I can remember. One thing is that Charles said that there's a difference between roles, feminine and masculine roles, as they have always been in society, which are obviously changing, and which I think Baba obviously had a hand in changing, or, the hand in changing, wanted them to change, but that roles are different from attributes, and that we can, as husbands or men, accept the changing of roles without being threatened and without losing our masculine attributes. And as Darwin said, if we just kind of relax and, realize that Bob is doing this and not worry about it, then we can also gain a lot. And Paul was saying, how are we going to become more intuitive? Well, I think if we accept the changing roles, it also gives us a greater opportunity for, getting some of those, acquiring some of those feminine traits that we want, like intuition. Because, if we allow our wives to change their roles a little and take on some of the male responsibilities that they want to take on, we can also have greater opportunity for developing our own intuition and our own personal relationship with Bob.
Can we turn this off? Is this on?
They're recording.
Yeah, I want to turn it off. I want to speak.
Just really getting acquainted with them in '69, when we went over there, having a little more time with them. So I really can't add anything to what you said about her from personal experience. And just have to base it on your own experience. That's as far as I can go with that.
She's really so extraordinary that it's difficult to describe how she is as a person, because she's really the most human. I feel of all the Motley, she's really one of the most human, in the sense that her vocabulary is not a spiritual vocabulary in the traditional sense. She doesn't talk about spiritual things in the realm of the planes, or she doesn't explain what Baba meant by such and such.
When Baba came to America in 1958 to the center, he seemed to be stressing obedience, and he assembled all the people who had come to be there with him for the week of Sabbath at the barn.
Would you like some water, Darwin?
No, it's just a little frog. The marshes. Get back. And he asked the whole group if they were willing to obey him. And nearly everyone raised his hand. He went on talking some more, and asked again, and some were doubtful that they could obey him, for example. But still he wanted to exact commitment from everyone. And of course he finally did within a very few moments. And then he added, to obey me 100%. And everyone did raise their hand to acknowledgement that they would obey him 100%. Well, he said, now the purpose of my coming to America is completed. This is about the first day of this harvest. But imagine, this was his main purpose in coming to America, to exact that commitment from us, that we would obey him 100%. And, you know, right away, a moment of panic. This is what he came for. Is he going to go back now? Unfortunately, he didn't. He stayed on for the whole Sabbath period. And he would frequently ask people, even coming to him for the first time, if they would obey him 100%. For example, our two daughters meeting him for the first time in 1952 at the Lagoon Cabin. Baba looked innocently at them and asked them if they would obey him 100%. He said yes, and he hesitated a moment. He said, yes, or just yes? Have you thought it over? Think of the consequences, what I might ask you to do. And so they did. They realized Baba had a way of conveying the seriousness of the situation to the individual, and they got the full brunt of it, and they still reaffirmed their willingness to obey him 100%. He said, even if I ask you to jump in the lake? I said, yes. With the alligators? He said, yes, Baba. And I know Litris told me that as this was being said, she was thinking in her own mind, well, if Baba wants me to be eaten up by an alligator, it's all right with me. I mean, she really felt that she would follow through. And a few days later, Baba had the other daughter, Renee, lead him to Alligator Pond over there. And she knew where it was. Back the night before, I took her through the pathway. I'm sure she knew the way. And of course, there might have been an alligator there, or many of them. As it turned out, there weren't any. But it was the willingness to obey that was so important. And again, in that same year, we took Baba down to the beach one time. And due to his hip injury, we carried him around a great deal in a carrying chair with long rails on each side. Sometimes the men would carry him, sometimes the women. Baba would get scary sometimes when the women would carry him. And more often than not, though, a group of strong young dancers, boys, would carry him. But going down to the beach, of course, he rode down in a car as far as one could go with the car, and then they transferred him to the chair, carrying chair, carried him around the end of the dunes where there's a little stream that runs out there. It was easy to get over. And Baba motioned toward the ocean. So this great crowd of people was walking along, shoes and stockings on, regular clothes and all, and getting closer to the ocean. Baba kept motioning. And I didn't think anything of it until suddenly we're walking in the ocean. And it was a split second. And I thought, what's happening? Is he going to drown us or what? But within that split second, the reply was, well, who cares? Just complete abandon and let's go. And so we only went in as far as our needs. You know, some did not even have that split second thought at all. They just, just had that abandon to obey him. They didn't care. We were all going to walk in, that would be the end of it. But as it turned out, he just wanted to get his feet into the water. He was up at a higher level in the chariots. But he would be up to things to give us tests on our obedience and to release us from our sense of restraint and build our confidence in him. For example, one year, back in the 40s, John Bass, Sam Cohen, and I got a cable from Baba asking us if we would be willing to obey him completely for an entire year. No explanations. John Bass and Sam Cohen were bachelors, and you'd think it would be easier for them to give an affirmative answer, and I am. my wife and 3 children, and I had to support them. And Papa had a way of conveying, anything would come through as a result of agreeing to that. Go to China, go to somewhere else, and sit there for a year. And I looked at Jean, and we thought it over, and of course we both knew right from the very beginning that we would certainly agree. I would agree, because we had that much faith in Papa that even if he did tell me to go off somewhere and leave them, he would look after them. And so we did. All 3 of us probably replied that we would obey him for the year. As it turned out, the orders he sent were not that difficult. I didn't have to leave my job, anything like that. Just have 1 solid meal a day for a whole year, and not even touch any female over 7 years of age for the whole year, unless by accident. And that was quite a working with my eldest daughter, because she was over 7. And I felt that was one way Baba was working with her as well as with me. And there were many other restrictions, which I should have been faithfully following anyway, like being completely honest, truthful, but curiously enough, no violence at all, unless it's to defend the honor of a woman. We were allowed that. These are some of the examples of obedience that seemed so very important to Baba. And of course, there were periods of time when the whole group over here were to be on silence for as long as a month at a time. Some went to work and made the best of it on their jobs. Maybe some of you lost their jobs, I don't know. Fortunately, for the month of silence, we were living in Myrtle Beach at the time, and I was looking after the center. Elizabeth Patterson's property there. And there were other times when we had fasts. One of them lasted some 6 weeks. And during the entire 6 weeks, we were allowed to drink all the coffee or tea we wanted each day. But in that coffee or tea, we could use per day a total of 1.5 quarts of milk and 8 tablespoonfuls of sugar. That was our diet for 6 weeks. And that was a hard one, because we were working, and as it got toward the end of that time, believe me, we only made it by really hanging on to Baba. It really brought us in there. Poor John Bass, he misread the instructions, and he thought it read 8 teaspoonfuls of sugar. He lost 25 pounds, by the way. I lost 5 pounds. And it was only through, somehow Baba got wind of it and told him, sent a cable for him to reread the instructions. And he discovered it was 8 tables. And so he finally made it through too. But these were samples of, we had a big laugh, and we always have had. John took it. But these are some of the samples of obedience in some ways. But of course, they had their reflection at deeper levels, I think, within us, because I know in me at least, it made me aware of the fact that through his discourses on the spiritual path, Baba's also, between the lines, talking about obedience. He isn't telling all these things just to entertain us, you know. There are things we can do, which at first seem beyond us, and he wants us, I think, to make the effort to gradually gain control over the baser nature, to learn sublimation, to stand fast, to learn to withstand inner pressures, to depend on him more and more, and all along the line, we would say, try, do your best, and I will help you. That I will help you is the key to any accomplishment that seems impossible and does seem impossible. And I think that this continues, that each one would find the same result by making the effort and having the faith in Baba that he will help, that we will develop inner strengths that we never knew were there. The weak spots will begin to straighten out, and we'll begin to get controls. Even if we fail 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times, keep trying. And we know enough we had to do that in athletics. We had to do that in our job, lots of things. Why not the spiritual kind? So just hang in there, keep trying. And after a while, with Baba's help, pretty soon we'll make the grade. And there will be a strength there that will sustain us. And all this is based upon obedience. And there are many other things connected with this obedience. It's worth exploring the possibilities and your own mystical path with Baba, the importance of obedience. Much books, volumes could be written on it. These are just a few thoughts.
When does the tea or the coffee?
There's another pot of coffee that has been brewed, and if anybody would like more coffee, certainly we can boil water for tea.
I'm just asking if this is an all-night affair, or when is there any particular conclusion?
What time do we have?
It's close to 10 o'clock.
Close to a conclusion.
I think Dana wants a word.
I want to add something to what Darwin just said. Baba asked me, are you going with me all the way? In 56, and I told that to Darwin. He said, he asked me that. So I just want to say this, that I have something in common with Darwin there. And that the point is that life or Maya or love is the nature of living to be tested. Again and again, tests will come. Some of them will be very rough, not only in connection with obedience, but the thing is to continue. And that's what I think the meaning of the holding on to Baba's Dhamma. Whether you're obeying or disobeying, whether things are going right or wrong, it's like a captain on a ship in a storm, sail ship in those days. You just hang in there and you just keep going, and you'll outride the storm, and you'll get to live to an old age, which I suggest, and overcome those sanskaras.
Well, Dana wants to live in an old age. I suppose we should rest too.
Do we have time for a funny story?
Oh, we always have time for fun.
Let me just make an announcement quickly. There's a number of women upstairs who are here. So circling the building.
Pick up the men now. There's a change in roles.
And the men have to clean up.
You can tell all the women that when the men got together, they spoke mostly about mayor.
So this is a funny story about the Holy Spirit, and I hope you won't take it as being sacrilegious. But in the southeastern part of the United States, both blacks and whites, for the most part, have a southern accent. And this story, nothing personal.
It's already.
And this story revolves around a minister who had the inspiration to have a very dramatic sermon. And on this particular sermon, he thought to introduce the appearance of a white pigeon or dove and a little boy. So midweek, he brought this little boy who was cooperative up to the floor above where the pulpit was. And there was a trap door there. And he said to the little boy, "Now this what is the Holy Spirit." Holy Spirit? Yeah, this is the Holy Spirit. And so the boy said, "All right, that's the Holy Spirit." And he was in a cage. And he said, "Next Sunday morning in my sermon, when I say, and the Holy Spirit descend, I want you to open that trap door and let that white dove fly by. You understand?" And the boy said, "Yes, I understand." And so comes Sunday, the preacher is preaching away, very fire and brimstone songs. And he comes to this part and he says, and the Holy Spirit descended. He goes up the trap door, nothing happens. And so a little bit disconcerted. He thought, well, maybe the boy didn't hear me. So he, in a much louder voice, he says, and the Holy Spirit descended. Still nothing happens. So we made one more great effort. And the Holy Spirit descended. And the trap door opened, and the little boy looked down and said, I'm sorry, sir, but the cat done ate the Holy Spirit. Shall I put the cat down?
Yes. One more joke.
Oh my goodness.
There's a preacher and a nun who were playing golf. And the preacher was, unfortunately, not terribly patient. So, and he also had that vocabulary, and he would rant and rave. And so she would say, "Look, you've got to watch your language." And he says, "Well," and then they just go on, and pretty soon he says it again. "Damn it, missed again." He says, "Look, you've got to stop it." And he keeps going on. And then later, some clouds start forming. Big black clouds. And it starts to rain. And he says, "Damn it, missed again." He says, "Well, if you don't watch your vocabulary, you could be struck down by lightning." And so just a few seconds later, a huge lightning bolt from the cloud comes down and hits her. And then you hear a big voice from the sky. "Damn it, missed again."
Okay. What other religions do we have to talk about? Any Muslim?
I know a couple of Sadarji jokes that are just dynamite.
Oh, well, anyone want a last word?
Thank you
all for coming. There's one word I'd like, I didn't get to say it to Sahavas, and that is that meeting everyone here has been a tremendous experience. And I feel really that I've been given a great gift by being allowed to come this year. I felt it was Baba's will and his timing because it's totally unexpected. It seemed like something that Baba would do, but just wanted you to know in my life that it's been a very important time for me in many, many ways that I can't express or explain fully now, but I just, I feel somewhat, in a way, transformed almost by being here with you this Sahavas weekend, which has continued until now, and I want to thank you for that gift. And I genuinely mean that from my heart. You've given me something very important. I just hope that we can say we'll see each other again soon, and maybe it'll be India, Myrtle Beach. At least we can hope that it'll be one of those wonderful, happy places that we'll be together again. So thank you.
Thank you.